Hello everyone, welcome to day 2 of the FIDE Grand Prix 2022 semi-finals in Belgrade, Serbia. In this game, we will feature once again Rapport's masterful save against Lagrave, and it earns him the finals berth in Belgrade. Let's go through the game. Started with e4. Okay. Fire on the first move. We're expecting a fight after Lagrave lost the first game. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. I was expecting a Berlin or a Petrov, because Rapport just needs a draw in the second game, but it was different. He came here also in a fighting mood. a6, bishop a4, d6. We have the Morphy, Morphy variation of the Roy Lopez. Castles, bishop g4, h3, h5. All right, Rapport being Rapport. An original player. Okay, although the move h5 is not new, but I think it's also a surprise. This is a surprise to Lagrave. Yeah. Let's take a look at the game. d4 is played. b5. Bishop into b3. Knight takes d4. Now, let's look at this one first. After h5, it's important that white should not capture on g4 straight away, because after takes, the knight has no square to go, right? Because the bishop is still not developed on c1, the d2 pawn is blocking it. So you go back to e1, there's queen h4, threatening mate on h1. If you play f3, there's g3. You cannot stop the mate. Right? So that's the main thing about h5, right? It opens up the flank. d4, the main point of d4 is to open up that line for the bishop so that the knight can jump on g5 once white captures the bishop on g4, and it's also blocking the way of the queen to h4. b5, bishop b3, knight takes d4. This is forced now. Takes, knight g5, the point of d4, right? The bishop protects line g5. Knight's attacking f7 and also the bishop here. So knight h6, protecting the f7 square, temporarily blocking the rook on h8, g3, okay, bishop e7. Again, the point of g3 is for white to play f4 after bishop e7 to protect that knight on g5. So g3, bishop e7, now f4. They are actually following a game by Yusupov back in the 90s, against Kinderman. But here, Rapport played a new move with queen d7. In the previous game by Yusupov went for c6. Okay, let's take a look at the game. His opponent went for bishop e3, knight takes on b3, c takes b3, and then d5. Opponent went for queen c1, rook to c8, f takes e5, d4. White played rook to d1. Yusupov sacrificed his queen with d takes e3. But in the game, actually, he has this stronger resource with knight f5, which he missed. Because if capture, he has queen d5, threatening mate on h1. Queen to h1, and then rook to h2. Okay, he captured e3, but he still went on to win it was a game like this. Takes, bishop takes g5, then king g8. He played his king to h7, moved the pawn to f6, rook to e8. Okay, went on to win the game in the endgame, right? Okay, that was back in the day. In this game, Rapport played queen to d7 after f4, right? Now, for example, here, if pawn captures on e5, there's take. If you capture on f7, there is knight f3. And if you capture bishop takes f7, just takes. Same thing, knight f3. So f7, it's not possible to be taken. Okay, so Legrand went for f5, c6, knight into c3, queen d8. Interesting, yes. Queen d7, earlier with the pawn on f4, the pawn on f5, back to d8 after c6, controlling d5 first. Logical plan by Rapport. Takes on f7, takes on f7. Queen takes g4, knight takes b3, a takes b3, bishop g5. All right, exchange. King into g2, queen f6 maybe not needed. You can just simply capture the bishop on c1, rook to c1, and queen g5 to save time. Okay, he went for queen f6, knight d1. To actually help white to play knight f2, protecting g4. c1, g5, takes, knight into g5, knight into f2. Castle's queen side. Maybe not the best move by Rapport. He could have just played king e7 here. Maybe he wanted his king to control these two pawns. Yeah, after c4, he could go for king b7. Although it's still equal. c4, king into c7, rook h1, takes on c4, takes on c4, a5, still equal. Rook a1, king b6. All right, it was again here important to take that rook on h1. Yes, one less trouble. Because if, for example, if the king takes, then you can just go rook to b8. Yeah, rook takes a5. Yeah, rook takes b2. Rook a7, just rook b7. You only need a draw. But Rapport once more. He played king d6. He wants more. Rook to d1. No more exchange. Rook to h7. Wrong plan. Yeah. Again, when the knight is beside the king is safe. No matter what you do. So rook d3, rook lift. And now check on b3 first. Nice move. Tempo with rook a3. It's now winning for white. Although it's not easy to win the game. Yeah. Rook h2, king f1, king b6, rook a5. One down. Knight into f3, threatening knight d2 to c4. Nice move, c5 check, blockade here. Taking away the escape square of the king. D takes c5. King is not safe. Rook a6. King b5. Rook 1 a5 check. King b4. Rook a4 check. King b5. The other rook. Okay, it's just gaining time for a5. And then finally rook a3. You could have just played rook a3 earlier, but he wants to gain maybe around, because there's a 30-second increment per move. So here he gains around 2 minutes. Knight e2 check. The knight has to help the king. King into g1, knight c4, stopping the rook from going to b6. Rook into d3. Rook goes back to h6 to protect that pawn on c6. Rook a7, rook on the 7th rank, threatening g7, potential fast pawns, yes, g and f. White should be winning. Rook b8, b3. Okay. Knight a5, knight g4, knight threatens e5, threatens c6, rook threatens g7, knight takes b3. Okay, here rook takes g7. Well, from here, Rapport played flawless defense to save the game after rook takes g7. It's a big question why Lagrave did not take the exchange on h6. Okay, after it takes on h6, there is this intermediate move, yeah, and then rook to d6, g takes h6, but it's still winning for white, yeah. Rook takes e6 now, keeping an eye on that pawn. Well, rook takes g7. It's more or less an intuition. White feels that these two pawns are enough, you know, the connected pawns. And he feels that he can stop this double pawn also. While his knight is also threatening the capture on e5, so it's actually 3 connected pawns. We cannot fault Lagrave here. c4, rook to d1, rook h8, knight takes on e5. It looks winning now, of course. Yeah. Knight threatens c6 with a double attack on the rook and the king, forcing the rook to protect. And now rook g6. But Rapport calculated so well. Yeah. He was comfortable. Play c5 straight away, knight c6. Sacrifice the exchange, rook takes c6. Actually, these two pawns looks dangerous, yes. Well, the c pawn can promote, but the rook is there. c3, f6, connected pass pawns. c2, rook f1. c1, takes. That's why it's important. Okay, here the ability to calculate comes into play. Okay, if you want to be a strong player, you just need two things, two skills to master. One is the ability to calculate, right? And the ability to visualize. And here, Rapport's calculation comes into play. e5, not scared, 92, 94, everything is under control, according to Rapport. Although optically, it's just better for white, yeah, with the connected pawns. Into d6, this reminds me of a game by Daniel Dubois. It's knight to b5, rook to d7. Yeah, Dubois against Grandelius in the Tata Steel. Grandelius also had an extra knight. Dubois has disconnected pawns. c4, well calculated. e6, c3, pass pawn must be pushed. Now let's take a look at rook going back to d1 to stop the pawn, because we're gonna go rook c7. Yes, yeah. There's the knight. If you go to b1, black wins with f8. All right, because you're forced to play f7, or else it will be rook takes with a check. If you play f7, I'll c2. You cannot push once again. This takes. If you go rook c1, king c3. Now, if you move out, let's say you move out, knight goes c7. It protects the important e8 square. So you cannot push. So here, Lagrave had to play e7, but c2, you also cannot stop passport back. After f7, promote. He promotes the queen, e8. Queen c5 check, nice check. Keeps an eye on f8. Rook also keeps an eye on f8. King has no shield. King g2, queen c6 check. King h3, queen h6 check. The king cannot stuck on g4 or else you lose, because queen g6, there's an attack on e8, right? If the king goes to f3, just takes, and queen can take. That's, sorry. After you take, queen can take. Fortunately, the king has to go back to g2, and now queen c6, you cannot stop the perpetual. What a save by Richard Rapport, which earns him a berth in the finals and temporarily leads the road to the candidates with a possible 17 points, because qualifying in the finals, if you get second place, you get 10 Grand Prix points, yes? In the first leg, he qualified in the semifinals, he got 7. So with the finals berth, he could go maximum 13 by winning the leg, but for now he has 10. And with 7 in the first leg, he's 17. Aronian winning Nakamura winning the first leg, that's 13. Aronian second place with 10. So actually now Rapport leads all players, yeah, for the 2 important slots in the candidates. And in this game, he showed grit and determination to save a lost position. And that is actually an important character if you want to become a world champion one day. All right, that was it. Tomorrow will be the tiebreak for the other semifinalists, Anish Giri and Andrew Kim. So we will continue our coverage tomorrow of the FIDE Grand Prix 2022 in Belgrade. This is Coach Oliver. Stay safe, everyone. Bye-bye.